Thank you, folks. It's an amazing night. We've spent the last 3 days of the festival really diving into, I'd say, hyper-political films, and then there's this representation, and again, that goes really to the core of other Israel and Arab life in Israel. That's not necessarily as specifically political, and I think we're proud to partner with the Interagency Task Force on Israeli Arab issues and I think a perfect partner for this film, and I'm glad that Erica Shaps is here to moderate the conversation. And please welcome the director of the film, Orit Ofir Ronell.
Thank you so much. Is mic on? Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm glad that every year IATF is able to work with Other Israel to bring these types of stories and create these opportunities. As was mentioned, my name is Erica Shaps, and I'm the Educational Programs Manager at IATF. We're a nonpartisan educational organization bringing stories of Arab communities in Israel to Jewish communities here in the U.S. And I'm thrilled to be here with Orit to discuss this wonderful film you created and the story that you brought with us that's so very rooted in Jerusalem, but also very much is a family story and about everything that comes with families, from forgiveness and legacy and money and drama and love. So we're going to dive into a conversation. I think we'll talk, the two of us, for a few minutes. I know I have a lot of questions, but then I'm going to want to open it up to audience questions as well. To start, can you just tell us more about how you discovered this story and what motivated you to make a film about it?
Okay, good evening, good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank Zach for being here. I think this idea of the festival is just beautiful and great and very, very essential these days. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for your hospitality. It's really, I appreciate it a lot. Razzouk Tattoo is my third film. My second film was about my family. Also the first movie was about the family. And my second film was about my family. It's called Seret Burekas. And it tells a story about my grandmother, who came from Bulgaria, and her father brought with him the knowledge how to make burekas. And then he introduced the burek to the new immigrants, and they all loved it, and they opened a big factory. It's called Sami Burekas, and it became a really big blast. And then there were struggles in the family. The two brothers really fought from each other, and they envy each other, and it ended up very bad. So after I dealt with my family story, I said, okay, no more stories about my family, no more things that are around me. I want to do something that's very, very far from me. And one evening, I read an article in Orit newspaper, and it was about Prince Harry, who had to come to Israel. He arranged his coming to Israel, and it says that he wants to make a tattoo at Wasim's shop. And I read this article, and I said, oh, I know nothing about it. What is this tattoo? What is this? The whole word of what was written was very, very new to me. So I just got into the car, and I drove from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and I entered his shop just in the near Jaffa Gate. And I discovered a whole world that I knew nothing about. As an Israeli, as Jew in Israel, you study nothing about Christianity. You know nothing about Christianity, and of course, Christian Arabs. And I entered the shop, and I felt the strong energy of these pilgrims. and only then I knew that there are pilgrims that are coming to the Holy Land from the first century. Some of them paid with their life to get to Israel, to get to the Holy Land, and I knew nothing about it. So I just drew into the story, and I wanted to tell their story. At the beginning, I was interested mostly about why they are going there, why it is important for them to make it a two, as people had done centuries ago. What is the meaning of it? Why this is moving them? They were sitting in the shop, so exciting, and so it was a very important moment in their life. So at the beginning, I was interested in what brings them to this point, but only later, I got to know Wasim and his family, and then I discovered this story that happened in the family. So eventually, I ended up with the same story as the Burek story. two brothers who fight themselves. So, yeah. So I hope the next movie won't be about it, but I cannot promise.
Yeah, I mean, it's even indicative itself that you told a story about your family, about Jewish Israelis, and the tension and the way you navigated, and then you can go to another culture, another community inside a little shop in the old city and find something that really resonates as such a human experience, such a fundamental
We are all
experience.
the same. Eventually, we want the same things. We fight for the same things. So this is other Israel. I mean, who can tell, who knows, in the Israeli mythos, in the Israeli myth, you don't conclude those stories. You know nothing about Christianity, and you know nothing about Arabs, especially Christian Arabs. This is other Israel. This is the story of the Holy Land. It's not the story of Israel.
We were talking on the phone a few days ago, and I used to live a few blocks from the tattoo shop for a few years, and I passed it so many times. And even as someone who spent a lot of time in these other Israels, I had no idea that there was such a world behind that little shop. And I'm so glad you brought that story to us.
Thank you.
One thing I was wondering watching the film, and I'm sure many people are too, is since it was made, have there been more developments? Have any stamps turned up or been found? And what's your communication been like with the family, with the Razzouks moving forward?
All right. So there was no new stencil found. I know there are many stencils around the world in some collectors. And I was a bit worried during this Wasim's adventure, if he would get to find a new one, if he would get one or not. But then I realized this is not the story. It's not about getting or achieving. It's not about the material. And even Wasim, this is his conclusion, even Wasim got to realize that this is not important. What's important is the relationship between the people. And what happened today? Well, while I was filming, the pandemic started, and of course it ruined the business completely. The shop was packed before the pandemic. You were there, right? You were in the shop. Sorry? You were this summer here. Okay, later I would want to hear. And so when the pandemic started and just the pilgrims disappeared one day, and Wasim, he stayed without a job. So I was very lucky to film the pilgrims before the pandemic, and I had enough material of this. And I was lucky because now Wasim was not busy, and I could I could have him for the film. And then the pilgrims started to come back, but it took a long time. I was there a few months ago. The two brothers, the two sons of him, are working in the shop, and they are very committed. And this is so beautiful to see how they are working all together and how they understand the meaning of the tradition.
And how did the different members of the family respond to the film and experience the film? Did they tell you anything?
Sure. Well, the relationship between the director and the character is always something difficult and very complicated.
Complex, yeah.
Complex. So, and if somebody will tell you different, this is a lie. It's very, very hard. And it was hard for me with the three movies I made. Even my family, and this is very complicated because somebody entered into your life one day and he wants to make a film about you, about your story. But what is your story? Who can tell? The story is from the eyes of the director. So it was not easy always, but Wasim liked the movie. He liked it in the first place. And the problem was it's always changing. Sometimes they like it. Sometimes they come with the idea, oh, no, you told the story wrong. But I think that the biggest problem was when I put Vida on the poster. And then started the riots. And Georgette didn't want to see the movie. She said, why you put Vida on the poster? She is not the story. She's not related to the story. Yeah, not easy.
Wow. Wow.
But I know that this is part of things. I cannot run away from it. I mean, this is something that I have to accept.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to open it up, so start thinking about what other people want to ask. But we had just heard and mentioned that this is perhaps one of the less political, or at least overtly political films of this festival. Do you see this as a political film?
Wow, good question. In the surface, it's not a political movie at all, because it doesn't, except for what Wasim says about the Intifada and his friend that died from when he throws stones on bus. Except for it, nobody says anything about politics. But I think that this is very, very political movie from many aspects. First of all, it's a movie about Palestinians, family, with no connection to the Israeli Palestinian help me?
To the
Conflict,
yeah.
Yes. And I think this is the point, because we don't used to see stories, we don't used to see them as just people with love, with hate, with envy. We used to see them as people from and related to the conflict. And you don't see stories about in Arabic, because as Israeli, when you hear Arabic, you automatically think about the conflict. So I wanted to bring the other Israel and to relate to them as Israelis. Their story is part of our myth, and I wanted to emphasize this point. I'm really proud that this came out like this. So I think it's very political.
How is the film received when you've shown it in Israel?
Well, people get used to the language. I think not in the beginning, but after they
the language meaning it being in
Arabic, yes, yeah, but then they realize that they are just people, and I think this is the way for dialogue, to see them like this.
And I think, as you said, like having Arabic be more in the public sphere. There's also been events about that in the Public Film Festival, and just being normal. It's a language that people speak, and doesn't have to be something that's fearful or hard. Probably was a real impact of showing the film in and of itself.
Yeah, and that's what the reason also that I went to study Arabic was, of course, to understand them, but it's a statement. It's not just the language of your enemy, it's language of people.
Great.
Yeah.
I want to open it up to some audience questions. We have a mic going around, and we'll come to you to ask.
Did you know the backstory before you started filming, or were you filming the pilgrims and the backstory arose?
I started to film the pilgrims, talking to Wasim, because I was curious to know why people are so excited to have tattoos that many people before them done. And there is one pilgrim she is a pastor, the blonde. She appears at the end of the movie, and she explained why it is moving for her, why it is important for her, and she says that she wanted to make the tattoo like people had done so many years before, and she wanted to say the rituals that had done many years before, because she wanted to be part of a big story, and that was a sufficient answer for me, that people want to be part of a chain, and I started with this question. But then I got to know the family, and I got to know Wasim and his family, and then as I explained before, I went to this story more profoundly. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was really a lovely film. I found myself wondering why the Razzouks left Egypt and moved to Jerusalem in the first place. I'm wondering if you know that.
Because, thank you. They were Christians, and it was very tough time for Christians to be in Egypt. They were persecuted. And Wasim says in the film that there was a tradition of tattooing pilgrims in the Holy Land before they came. But in Egypt, they started tattooing each other. He explained it in the film. They started to make tattoo in order to distinguish between Muslims and Christians. So they knew how to do it. And when they came to Israel, to the Holy Land, and they just blended in the tradition that was already going on, but very slightly.
Hi, really complicated narrative.
Exactly.
So I want to ask you if you got any pushback in Israel from Israeli Arabs, Palestinians, for making this film as a Jew, as an Israeli, and not, in other words, your angle. You're coming in from the outside, you're a Jewish Israeli. Was there pushback about that? As in, you don't have the right to tell this story because you're...
pushback by the family or the people
or by
from
other...
there.
Yeah, I'm projecting as an American in the
Yeah.
middle of this cultural debate that's all over the place about intersectionality and, who has the right to tell a story.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if that argument really applies in Israel.
Yeah.
But certainly here, I can't imagine that this would not come up. Don't you agree? Yeah. Okay.
Within the family, you mean?
No, not
even
within the
just
family, within the cultural sphere. All the.
Okay.
I'll give a little. There's
Yes, please.
There's a lot of discussion, as you said, in the U.S. I think, and other places too, but it's really big here about who gets to tell what stories, and do you have to be of a community, of a heritage, of an ethnicity to tell that story well, or to have the right people would even say to tell that story. There's a discussion going on. So either within the family or among Arab citizens of Israel or Palestinians and people who live in East Jerusalem, was there pushback of like, who are you to be bringing the story to an audience, or was that not something you experienced?
No, I haven't felt that. No. What was important is to tell the story not in the eyes of Israelis. And that was also the, this movie went to Channel 33. They gave most of the money for the film. And this is the Arabic channel of Atagid. And they are searching for stories. You can, as Jew, Israeli, to tell every story you want, but you need to tell it from the eyes of a Palestinian or of Arab, not as Israeli who is observing Arabs. So this was the first condition. And yes, I tried to do it from this angle. Regarding the family, they accepted me when Wasim accepted me. We are all human at the end, and I understood that he is the head of the family, and when he trusted me, they all trusted me.
I just wanted to ask a follow-up question on that. We started talking before about the film being in Arabic and how that sort of shaped the impact and how it was viewed by different people. Was that entirely a practical choice based on language barrier? I mean, we heard Wasim lived in Australia, or is it because, was there some artistic or intentionality behind doing the whole film in Arabic?
I'm not sure I understood. You're asking why it was in Arabic?
Why it was in Arabic? Was it only practical because it had to be in Arabic, or was it a deliberate choice on your part?
Oh, it's related to the question before.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course it must be in Arabic. This is the whole point, to bring the story from their eyes, their language, to respect their language, to respect their culture, of course. I was thinking about, there are testimonies in the movie, when the character talks to the camera. I was a bit wondering if it's right to do it in English or to do it in Arabic, and I'm really, really glad I did it in their language. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful, beautiful language, and it's so fun and meaningful to learn this language.
Yeah.
How many hours was the raw material?
A lot.
500?
I shoot it 22 days, 3 hours every time. Yeah.
Wow.
Thanks for coming.
Folks, tell your friends about this fantastic film. It's really a gem. You could get your tattoos right outside. Temporary. I want to thank you so much. Thank you, first of all, both of you, for this fabulous conversation, and for making a film that really is stories that need to be told. And I think there is a political level here that comes underneath the surface that is so important to show that this normality of life that exists within Israel.
Exactly.
For Arabs. We're having a conversation on Wednesday at noon led by the Abraham Fund Initiatives about Arabic in Israel and what this means, the language itself, so you could dive in a little deeper there.
I really recommend it.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Erika.
Next up, we have at 4:30 Dead Sea Guardians. Please join us for that and much more all week.